UFC Vegas 105 takes place this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my exact predictions for how I think every fight on the card is going to play out. So without further ado, let's get into the picks. As always, I like to look at my past week's performance to see, what we can improve upon, and that's not the right screen. Here is the right screen. We went 6-6 on a card that felt easily sweepable, very easily sweepable. We got the 50-50 fights correct. We picked Manuel Torrez over Drew Dober. That was a great pick. And we picked McKee Costa over Christian Rodriguez. Great picks. But the problem is, we got a little dog happy. We picked Steve Erceg in the main event when Moreno was a no-brainer pick. That was rough one. CJ Vergara, I thought the line was a little wide. Haven't really seen that much out of Torrez to make me think he was going to go out there and finish him in round one. And that's exactly what he did. So, whoops. Simon Oliveira, plus 300 underdog. We took. Got steamrolled. Julia Palastri, got steamrolled. Gabriel Miranda, got steamrolled. Although he almost won by round one sub, which was kind of nuts. He had him in a deep arm triangle. But, yeah. And then Ronaldo Rodriguez, sheep pick. That was probably my only bad pick. All right? I know I went 6-6. But my only bad pick was really Ronaldo Rodriguez. I easily could have went 11-1 if I didn't just become a hot take merchant. That's kind of what last week's video was. I was riding on the coattails of my previous week's performance. I thought I was hot. I thought I was him. Turns out I'm not. I'm not him. You can't just pick 7 underdogs and think you're going to do well. So we're going to take this, and we're going to sweep this week. I'm feeling it. I am feeling it. Let's get into the picks. First fight on the card, we have Loma Lookboonmee taking on Istela Nunes. And honestly, you guys know me. I'm the dog chaser. I'm the dog lover. I was really looking for a reason to take Istela Nunes in this matchup. She does possess a 5-inch reach advantage, and she's a Muay Thai world champion, similar to Loma Lookboonmee. But the problem that I keep running into is that Istela Nunes has yet to win in the UFC. She is 6-5, and she has fought some pretty mid-level competition. They kind of tried to give her a softball against Arnie Carnelossi, because, Arnie Carnelossi can't really strike. Maybe, Istela Nunes can wax her on the feet. She kind of was, and then she kind of gassed out towards the end and gets rear naked choked in round 3. So that was like the softball matchup. Then she fights Sam Hughes, which, it was a kind of back-and-forth matchup, and the reason Istela lost is because Sam Hughes activated her wrestling and takedowns. Then Istela fights Yasmin Uruguay in a fight where it's going to definitely stay standing. Neither person really possesses takedowns. And Nunes shows success at first, knocks down Uruguay in the first minute, but then just fades away, and Uruguay ends up landing 2 knockdowns and KOing Istela Nunes on the ground. And then Victoria Dudakovic just snaps her arm because she doesn't know how to defend a takedown. So in this matchup, Loma Lookboonmee, if she keeps it standing, yes, Istela Nunes has a great chance to win this if this remains a striking battle for 3 rounds. The thing is, though, I think Loma Lookboonmee knows that. I think she knows that her path to victory is very simple. Just take Istela down and work your way towards a submission. She did the same thing against Elise Reed. The way to beat Elise Reed is just take her down, and Loma Lookboonmee did that, found a sub. The way to beat Istela Nunes is to take her down, and I think Loma Lookboonmee will do that in this matchup. So, Loma Lookboonmee by round 1 submission. Next fight on the card, we have Vanessa Demopoulos taking on Talita Alencar. And in this one, if Talita Alencar didn't fight against Luciano in her last fight, I probably would be picking Vanessa Demopoulos, okay? Because Alencar's tape has not been the greatest. Her striking is kind of mid. Her takedowns are mid. Everything is mid. Except, though, when it gets to the ground, she's a world-class BJJ practitioner. Now, against Luciano in her last fight, she did show some signs of improvement in the striking, which makes me believe that, she'll actually do pretty well in this matchup against Demopoulos. Both women have a sub-60-inch reach, so usually Alencar always has a reach disadvantage, and usually Demopoulos always has one, but in this one, they're pretty evenly matched. I think if this hits the ground, Alencar is going to win by sub, and I just think that it will hit the ground. Demopoulos doesn't really have a lot of oomph, not a lot of power in her punches, and not a lot of submissions in her grappling. So, not really seeing a path to victory for Demopoulos. She's going to probably get outworked in the grappling and wrestling, and probably will get submitted. So, ultimately, I'm going to take Talita Alencar to win by round 1 sub. Next fight on the card, we have Victor Henry taking on Pedro Falcao. And in this one, Pedro Falcao, he's had 1 fight in the UFC. It was on a week's notice against Victor Hugo. He clearly won the first round against Hugo with his wrestling, pushing forward motion, just constant keeping the pressure on Hugo. But he eventually kind of gassed out and nearly got finished by Hugo in the last round before losing a decision. Now, Victor Henry, he's about to be 38 years old, and he's at bantamweight. So right off the bat, that is a red flag. If you're above 35 years old at the lower weight classes, that will affect you more than if you're at the higher weight classes. And I think at 38 years old, his age is starting to show. Against Charles Jourdain, I did pick Victor Henry in that matchup, thinking, he would be able to outwork Jourdain, maybe outvolume him. He kind of was. And then he shoots a lazy takedown and just gets guillotined. So that was a frustrating way to lose a Finn's hammerlock. So thank you for that, Victor Henry, you low IQ POS. Thank you very much. Appreciate all you do for us. So yeah, Victor Henry at 38 years old and bantamweight, it's very hard to make a case for him. Potentially he can outwork Falcao. Potentially he can, grind his way to a decision victory just by moving forward. But I think Falcao is going to be the one moving forward. He's about to turn 33. He is way younger, and I just like his build better than Victor Henry as well. Falcao is going to move forward. That's the thing. He got put up against Victor Hugo in his UFC debut, and everybody's writing this guy off. I think Victor Hugo is pretty good. I know he's no longer signed to the UFC, but for the time being, he was pretty good. He was mainly seen as a BJJ guy, and Falcao turned him into a striker. So that's how good Falcao's BJJ is, in my opinion. I think in this matchup, he can potentially get the back of Victor Henry. I think he can ride out back control. I think that is a path to victory. I think he can even submit Victor Henry. He is submittable. He even got submitted in his last fight. I think a lot of paths to victory present themselves for Pedro Falcao in this matchup, and Victor Henry, his main path to victory is to anti-wrestle Falcao and potentially land more shots on the feet. I don't think that's a viable path in this matchup. It's the Apex. Small cage means the grappler has the advantage when he usually doesn't. So for all those reasons, give me the younger guy. Give me the Brazilian. Give me Pedro Falcao by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Rhys McKee taking on Daniel Frunza. And Rhys McKee has to be one of the most frustrating fighters to back in my life. I'm pretty sure I've gotten every Rhys McKee fight wrong other than when he fought Hamzat because, I predicted Hamzat to ragdoll, and that's exactly what he did. But, Rhys McKee against Chidi Njokuani, I picked Rhys McKee there, and it was very frustrating. Rhys McKee is he doesn't throw it a lot of volume. He doesn't throw it a lot of heat. He ends up just getting too close and ends up clinching you against the cage. The thing is, though, Daniel Frunza, one of his weaknesses is being controlled against the cage and also being controlled on the ground. So there is a path to victory here for Rhys McKee, just to control Frunza against the cage and, get this fight to the ground to potentially land some shots in full mount. Daniel Frunza has shown that he can get taken down and he does allow himself to be controlled. However, one thing I do love about Daniel Frunza is we've seen him battle adversity already. In his Contender Series fight, he got knocked down, nearly finished in the first round, comes back and finds a finish of his own. I love that. It shows how much dog he has in him. I also watched back his fight against Haris Tolonzic, and in that one, it was even striking for 2.5 rounds. And then at the end of round 3, Frunza just lands this wicked elbow and just completely starches Tolunzic. In this matchup, I don't know how you can possibly back Rhys McKee other than the fact that Frunza is a rookie from the Contender Series. But I think that Frunza has shown enough dog on the tape already to make me think that he will defeat Rhys McKee. And, Rhys McKee has shown signs of being chinny. Whenever he gets hit by a big shot, he usually crumbles a little bit. And, yeah, he does have 5 inches of reach, but I think that'll actually be bad for him. I think that'll leave Frunza more open to fire some overhands to clip the chin of Rhys McKee. So, ultimately, all paths to victory available for Frunza. He has more dog. Give me Daniel Frunza by round 2 KO. Fellas, I'm not going to lie. I filmed the second half of this video, and the audio was completely muted. So, maybe it was for the better, but bear in mind, the second half of the video, I'm gonna try to speed through the picks because I put a lot of effort and it got muted. So, just a PSA. Next fight on the card, we have God dang it. Next fight on the card, we have Davey Grant taking on Daniel Santos, and I think in this matchup, Davey Grant, he's nearing 40 years old. But if you look at his recent fights. He lost to Daniel Marcos by split decision, and he lost to Adrian Yanez by split decision. Both fights, I think he could have scored for Davey Grant. So in theory, he could be on a long winning streak at the moment with only 5 losses on his record. He also fought Ramon Taveras in his last matchup. The reason I'm bringing up these 3 specific matchups is because in each of them, he was older by like 9 years. And each of them, a main reason for picking Marcos, Yanez, and Taveras was that the age gap was too much and Davey Grant was going to slow down. But guess what? Davey Grant has not slowed down. Davey Grant has one of the best defenses in the UFC, to be honest. He doesn't really get hit that often. On the feet, he throws with good volume, and on the ground, he has sneaky submissions. Against a guy like Daniel Santos, if Marcos and Yanez couldn't have their way on the feet, I sincerely doubt a Shudo box guy like Daniel Santos will. And if you look at, the Shudo box guys in the UFC recently, they all have a tendency to go first round or bust. They all have a tendency where their cardio falls off a hill after the first round. So in this one, I can see Daniel Santos potentially winning the first round just by attacking Davey Grant, just by being in his face. But ultimately, I think Davey Grant's veteran savvy is going to pull through in this one. Even though he's an underdog, I still lean his direction, as does 64% of the Tapology community. They kind of agree with me in this one. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to use the term dog as a reason for a lot of these picks on this card. And this one specifically, I think Davey Grant has more dog than Daniel Santos. Daniel Santos coming off a 2-year layoff, not like he's a spring chicken, not like, he's a up-and-coming prospect. He is on a 2-fight winning streak, but against who? Johnny Munoz and John Castaneda? I think Yanez and Marcos had better resumes heading into the Davey Grant fight than this guy Daniel Santos does, and Daniel Santos is the favorite somehow, so all those reasons give me Davey Grant by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Luis Gurule taking on Osbourne. And in this one, it's really hard to trust Osbourne. There's a string of red L's, and the only W he has in recent memory is against Charles Johnson by split decision in a fight where I think Charles Johnson actually won that. And then another UFC win he has is against CJ Vergara, who's basically cut after his performance at Mexico City. So Osbourne is one of those guys where if you take him down, he will stay there, and you can control him. Osbourne is one of those guys where if you keep it standing, you will most likely outwork him on the feet and outvolume him. The only thing, though, is Osbourne has big power at certain moments. So in this one, Luis Gurule coming off a win against Nick Piccinini. Piccinini had 10-plus minutes of control in that one. He landed 10-plus takedowns. Luis Gurule outworked all of that to a decision victory. He was able to outvolume and outwork Piccinini on the feet. He was able to land with big power, even though he was getting taken down relentlessly. So it's not like his cardio is an issue. So in this one, I just think he's going to be able to outwork Osbourne on the feet. I think he's going to have takedowns in his path to victory as well if he chooses to do so. And I just think all paths to victory are available for Luis Gurule in this matchup. I think he's a pretty decent prospect. And Osbourne couldn't even beat Rolando Rodriguez, who now we know is a complete fraud. So for all those reasons, give me Luis Gurule by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Robert Valentin taking on Torrez Finney. And in this one, Robert Valentin, I don't even think he should be signed to the UFC. He lost in the tough finale against Ryan Loder because Ryan Loder just took him down relentlessly. Ryan Loder got him in a crucifix. Ryan Loder ground and pounded him to a TKO victory. I don't see why Torrez Finney can't do the same thing. All right, yeah, I know this guy Finney's had 3 Contender Series fights, which makes me think, Dana really didn't like what he saw in any of them. But finally, he was able to get a finish in his last one, and now he's signed to the UFC. And I think in this one, it's seemingly a layup matchup for Torrez Finney. Dana White said that Torrez Finney would get eaten alive by anyone on the active UFC roster. But the thing is, they got someone who's not even should be even on the UFC roster in Robert Valentin. So I think Torrez Finney is going to be able to take down Valentin just like Ryan Loder did. I think Torrez Finney is going to be able to ground and pound him out. And I think Torrez Finney is going to find a round 2 KO on the ground. Robert Valentin, he does have Jiri Prochaska. He's the Walmart Jiri Prochaska. And the fact that he fights like him, he acts like him, he talks like him, but he just doesn't win like Jiri Prochaska. So for all those reasons, Torrez Finney by round 2 KO. Next fight on the card, we have Gerald Meerschaert taking on Brad Taveras, and I'm not going to lie, this is the fight that I put the least amount of research and effort into actually handicapping. Brad Taveras doesn't get taken down. Brad Taveras has good submission defense, and therefore, he should be able to defeat Gerald Meerschaert. Brad Taveras is not like his cardio has been an issue. The main thing that we like about Brad Taveras is his durability, although it has been kind of falling off a cliff recently with his TKO loss against RoboCop. He brought Young Park to the brink in a split decision loss, which I think he kind of got robbed in that one. And against Gerald Meerschaert, if this stays standing, I think Taveras will be able to piece him up and outwork him at range. And if Meerschaert decides to shoot for takedowns, which he never does, he never shoots for takedowns, I think Taveras will be able to fend them off. That's also one of his main strengths is his takedown defense. So I think the only way that Meerschaert can win is if Meerschaert gets knocked down by Taveras. Taveras entertains the ground, and then Meerschaert finds a submission that way. That's really the only path to victory I see from Meerschaert, similar to how he defeated Edmund Shabazian. He got knocked down and then found a sub on the ground. But I think in this matchup, they're both 37 years old. It's the battle of the mid-veterans, and I think Brad Taveras, the decision merchant, will be able to come out on top. So Brad Taveras by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Martin Buday, and in this one, it's a little tricky because Kennedy Nzechukwu has only had 2 fights at heavyweight, and both of them have been against guys that are super not durable. Super chinny, super not durable. Chris Barnett broke his leg in the first round, and then Lucas Bresky could just not handle Kennedy's power. Against a guy like Martin Buday, who has a pretty solid UFC record, I think it's 5-1. He has a lot of UFC fights under his belt. He's got the UFC experience. This is going to be in the Apex cage, which makes me think that Martin Buday might have some success controlling the Nzechukwu against the cage like he does against most heavyweights. The thing that I'm just not getting there with Buday, I love to chase dogs, but, Buday, his path to victory in this one is to be the clinch Nzechukwu against the cage, outwork him, outgas him, and win a decision victory. That's really his only path. And there's nothing that I've seen from Kennedy's tape that would make me think that Martin will be successful in doing that. Martin, whenever he gets hit by a big shot, he crumbles. The heavyweights that he's beaten in the UFC is Andrei Arlovsky, who has pillow hands at this age, Josh Parisian, who is not UFC level, Jake Collier, who is not UFC level, and Lucas Bresky, who Kennedy Nzechukwu knocked out in the first round in his last fight, and Martin Buday nearly lost to a split decision to the guy. The only guy that he's fought with actual power in his hands was Shamil Gaziev, and Shamil Gaziev destroyed him. So I think we're going to see a similar story play out here. I think Buday is going to try to, panic clinch, try to keep this close. Kennedy's going to have 6 inches of a reach, and I just think he's going to find the shot eventually that'll make Martin Buday crumble. So for those reasons, Kennedy Nzechukwu by round 2 KO. Next fight on the card, we have Cortavious Romious taking on Chang Ho Lee. And in this one, Chang Ho Lee, Korean fighter. A lot of Asian fighters fight very similarly. If they don't excel in one department of MMA, they are very well-rounded. But the problem with being a well-rounded Asian fighter is you don't have enough power to KO your opponent, and you don't have enough submission ability to actually submit your opponent. So basically what ends up happening is you throw with high volume, and you shoot relentlessly for takedowns, and neither produces a finished outcome. So against a guy like Cortavious Romious, I don't think that game plan is going to work like it does against the other Asian fighters that Chang Ho Lee has fought. You can make the argument that Long Zhao even defeated Chang Ho Lee in their fight, because Chang Ho Lee wasn't really throwing with heat. He was landing, but it's not like he was rocking Long Zhao. And when he got on the back of Long Zhao, he was there for 5 seconds before Long Zhao reversed him. On paper, Chang Ho Lee has a lot of things that you might like. Excels in grappling, excels in striking. But really, with a lack of finishing ability at the UFC level, I don't think that's going to work. Now, Cortavious Romious is coming off a loss to Gaston Bolaños, so that could be a reason why people are making him the underdog. But Gaston Bolaños has very tricky striking. Chang Ho Lee does not. He's very simple. So against a simple striker, I think Cortavious Romious will have success with his takedowns. All right, against Michael Imperato, Cortavious Romious showed that he doesn't really need to shoot for takedowns to win. He can just keep it on the feet standing as well. So against Chang Ho Lee, if this stays standing, I think Romious is going to have a slightly more power to win on the feet. And I think if this goes into the grappling wrestling realm, I think Chang Ho Lee could have success offensively wrestling, but I think Romious will be able to reverse those positions. I think he's strong enough to do so. And I think he's just going to outlast and outwork Chang Ho Lee to a decision. I think he's just slightly better in every area of MMA over Chang Ho Lee. So for those reasons, I'm going to take the dog here, Cortavious Romious by decision. Next fight on the card, we have Joanderson Brito taking on Pat Sabatini. And Pat Sabatini has one path to victory. It is to glue himself to his opponent as quickly as possible and try to find a submission. Now, against Joanderson Brito, I don't think that's going to work out. the people that has worked out against are not well-rounded. He did it against Jonathan Pierce, who's mainly a submission wrestler guy, and it worked. He did it against Lucas Almeida, who's mainly a striker, and it worked. He did it against Jamal Emmers, who Jamal Emmers almost KO'd him at first, and it worked. Who did it not work against? Diego Lopez, who was insanely well-rounded, and Damon Jackson, who you would think is not well-rounded, but Damon Jackson clipped Pat Sabatini on the feet. So, Joanderson Brito has showed in his UFC career he is very well-rounded. The only person that he's fought similarly to Sabatini was Jonathan Pierce. And in that fight, Pierce was having success until Brito whipped out the ninja choke and choked him out for a submission win. So in this one, Sabatini is round 1 sub or bust. If he can't attach himself to Brito in round 1 and win, he is not going to win. He's going to gas himself out, and Brito is going to find a finish. Brito is very good at finishing, and I know he's coming off a loss to William Gomez, but William Gomez is a tricky striker. Sabatini is very easy to figure out, and I think in this one, Joanderson Brito will be able to figure him out, and he'll be able to find the KO blow similar to how Damon Jackson did. So for those reasons, Joanderson Brito, round 1 KO. That brings us to the main event of the evening. Josh Emmett taking on Lerone Murphy, and I think this is a very simple fight to break down. I think Lerone Murphy wins by decision, or Josh Emmett finds the overhand right and wins by KO. Lerone Murphy, not a lot jumps off the page, even though he's undefeated. He's very well-rounded, but he doesn't excel in one area of MMA. Against Edson Barboza, I did pick Lerone Murphy in that matchup to win by decision. I just thought he would just be able to outwork Barboza and just excel in areas where Barboza doesn't excel. But guess what? He actually remained standing with Barboza for a majority of that fight, and he was winning the striking exchanges with one of the best strikers in the featherweight division. So that was kind of a shock. It made me think that Lerone Murphy might have leveled up. Then he fights Dan Ige. Dan Ige is basically the Walmart version of Josh Emmett, which kind of sounds hurtful, but like they fight very similarly. They both not are one-trick ponies, but both are looking for the big shot. And Dan Ige could not find that against Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy was able to keep it at range for majority of the fight. Lerone Murphy was able to piece up Dan Ige. Lerone Murphy was able to outwork Dan Ige in the clinch positions and, work him on the ground. Now, against a guy like Josh Emmett, I think a very similar story is going to play out. I think whenever a well-rounded guy fights Josh Emmett is in for a world of hurt. Josh Emmett really does well against guys that are mononuclei. Is that a word? Well, for example, Bryce Mitchell only wrestles, easy knockout. Dan Ige only finds the big shot. He was able to outwork him on the feet. Calvin Kattar, mainly a striker, and Josh Emmett wins a split decision, which he probably shouldn't have won. Then he fights Ilya and Yair, who are pretty well-rounded in their own rights, and he just gets destroyed by them. And I think a very similar story is going to happen here. Lerone Murphy has the height and reach advantages. He has a 7-year age advantage. I think all of the variables are in Lerone Murphy's favor to win this by decision. You just got to bank on Emmett not finding that big overhand for the course of 5 rounds. I think for the first 3 rounds, that overhand is live. But once we enter round 4, once we get into round 5, I think it might be wraps for Josh Emmett. I think he might look like a punching bag at that point. So if this gets into round 4, Lerone Murphy's a lock. If somehow this is still going in like round 2 and 3 and it's back and forth, Josh Emmett might be worth a play. If Josh Emmett wins the first 2 rounds, you might be able to live bet Lerone Murphy because Josh Emmett might start gassing out because he's looking for that big shot. But ultimately, I just think Lerone Murphy beats Emmett in every area of MMA other than like big power. And for those reasons, Lerone Murphy by decision. And I present to you the full card picks for UFC Vegas 105. It is very, scattered. We have decisions, we got KOs, we got submissions. I think this card is actually scheduled to be a banger, low-key. There's a lot of finishes on this card to be had. I've picked, I believe, 4 underdogs: Talita, Alencar, Pedro, Falcao, Davey, Grant, and Cortavious, Romious. So let's see if it works out. Thank you for getting to the end of another episode of Finn's I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments who your favorite underdog is this week. I will shout you out if they win. Last week, UFC predictions tracker said that McKee Costa was his favorite underdog, and guess what? McKee Costa went out there and won. So shout out to you, UFC predictions tracker. Thank you for watching my videos as well, you savage. And make sure you leave a like. Let me know in the comments what I just said. Subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. You savage.